Hello everybody and welcome back to Kerbal Space Program, where we are currently making what appears to be a torpedo, and we have decided that when all else fails, we should just brute force it. Now, here's the question. Is this actually going to be functional? And also, is this going to push us forward or backwards? I think that depends on the way that these propeller blades are facing, and I guess we'll find out. I am worried that if we put this out on the pad, it's going to immediately explode with how far down these propeller blades are now sticking. So maybe we should put some sort of a structure here, at least for testing purposes, in order to hold it up. I don't know. Let's find out what happens if we put it out on the pad. This is going to be interesting. I just started up the game, so I think the cheats that we turned on last episode are going to be off now. I think. That doesn't save, does it? I guess I don't know. We'll find out. That should be interesting. Okay. Instant explosions? No explosions. Well, that's a good sign. So in that case, let's check here. So yeah, we want no crash damage and infinite electricity for right now. We're going to turn those off, but for the purposes of this testing, that'll be fine. So what we need to do is we need to go over to Eve and set this at 45 degrees. Do not ease to ground. And there we go. That should put us into the explodium. Eventually. There we go. So here we are in the explodium. We are floating at a pretty decent angle here. I like it. And now the question is, if we turn on SAS, position ourselves... Oh, we need to clear the input blocker. Right. Position ourselves right at the horizon. There we go. And that's the way to land. Okay. So we do something kind of like that. Basically a 45-degree directionality. Sure. And we spin up our propeller. What happens? We're not getting very much speed out of this, are we? This RPM is 54. So I'm assuming that this is because we're applying so much torque here to keep this from spinning. So clearly we're doing something wrong here, right? And I can see if I do this, which I'm manually intervening here. If we do this, then yeah, that's a bit of an issue. We toggle the brake action group and the brake takes effect. We turn off the brake action group. Yeah, so clearly we're doing something wrong here. We're kind of spinning this more than we're spinning this. So I'm wondering, do we have the rotor on backwards? Let's pull this back to the VAB and see if we can figure out what's going on here. There's clearly something happening that I'm not expecting to have happen. So what I'm going to do right now is I'm going to pop off this nose cone. I'm going to grab this entire contraption and I'm going to turn it to go like that. I'm also going to move these basic fins back slightly, and we're just going to put them right about there or so. Okay, that'll do for now. And so the question now is, if we're just sitting like this, in this orientation, we expect to still have the turning happening on the front portion here. I'm wondering if it's a weight distribution issue, if it's expecting to have a hugely higher mass on the essentially front side of the rotor, or if this is an issue with the rotor facing the wrong direction, or what exactly. So this is operating as we would expect. That's interesting. And yeah, that's going to cause some problems there. But that's very interesting. No crash damage really coming through for us here right now. But I'm just watching this thing move right now, and I'm thinking, this is behaving almost exactly the way I would expect it to. That's very interesting. So I have it in surface up right now. And let's just turn off the torque on our rotor here. That RPM is not going down very fast. Brake on. There we go. Okay. So now, there we go. This is behaving more like it was doing previously. So the torque limit has nothing to do with the actual RPM. That's just the torque. Gotcha. So you can see here that we are raising our RPM quite a lot. But the torque limit will affect how much torque goes on here, for sure. Okay. So with that in mind, this is definitely making more sense to me now. Let's pull this back to the vehicle assembly. It's just a slightly odd way to present this, but sure, that seems fine. We're taking this back to the vehicle assembly, and we're just going to rotate it back to go like this. We'll do the small nose cone again. Small nose. There we go. We'll put the small nose cone back on. And we'll put this back on the pad. And I want to try putting this out on Eve on a lower torque setting. I don't know what torque setting we're going to want here exactly, but we'll find out. So let's put this out on Eve. This is going to need to be probably, well, we're going to start at 1% torque. We'll see what that puts us at. And the engine may or may not be powerful enough for that. So that's definitely noted. Okay, so here we are, and I'm going to put SAS on. And we're going to orient around, well, we need to clear that tile blocker. Not tile blocker. This isn't Stellaris. We need to clear the input locker, and we just need to orient ourselves a little bit here. Good enough-ish. And now I'm going to turn this torque limit up to 1%. So you can see here, it's barely moving. So we can see that the RPM is at 1.3. It's not increasing further. So higher torque is absolutely required here. At 3% torque, our RPM stops increasing at about 4. So the question is, what's the lowest amount of torque that we can put in? And you can see the twisting already beginning here. Although it's not getting counteracted by our SAS, which is a little odd. Let's see if it does better on kill rot. Actually, yeah, it does a little bit better. So this is hanging out at a very, very blistering 12. And it looks like this is actually... no, these are... I think this is supposed to be the leading edge. So we're kind of going backwards on the RPM right now. We could invert our rotation like this. I'm still not sure what direction we're going here, but for the time being, this'll do. So I want to crank up the torque here. I want to find out what the minimum torque limit is to get this up to the maximum RPM. But maximum RPM is only like 50 RPM at this moment. So that's a bit of a problem. And I'm not sure that we're actually getting any propelling happening here. In fact, I'm pretty sure we're not. We may want to swap this over to just using a jet engine instead. That probably would be easier for us. So if we did that, we pull this back, we would need to have significantly fewer reaction wheels here. So I'm going to remove this. I'm going to pull this off. I'm going to remove all of these. And I'm going to remove this reaction wheel here. And then up here, we're going to have a fuel tank. This would need to be just jet fuel. So just liquid fuel. So we would need liquid fuel, and it would need to be about the right size, right? So this is a liquid fuel fuselage here. It's a little on the large side. So we'd want a Mark 0. And then we'd place it something kind of like that. And we could even move the basic fins up a little bit. I don't think we really need the fins, but I think they'll be useful to make sure that we don't accidentally roll over, would be the idea here. And we're going to need an air intake for this. This reaction wheel can go away. We've got these batteries. We probably don't need that quantity of batteries. I'm going to get rid of this for now. We'll just have the one battery, and I'm thinking about moving that up front, up here. At least for now. And then we put a jet engine back here. Although the inline reaction wheel could maybe move to be up front as well, to be something kind of like this. Maybe on the other side of the rechargeable battery bank, actually. The further away from the center of mass it is, the more effective it is. So we'll do something like that. And then just a jet engine back here. We'll need an air intake, but that's absolutely fine. So a very small jet engine like the Juno. And then we will need an air intake. And the question is, will this work as a boat? This is still basically a torpedo, but it's slightly different. So at this point, we need an air intake. That is not spelled with a G, turns out. So we've got this radial air intake. It's kind of huge. We could just use a circular air intake up at the front here instead of the nose cone, and that would probably work. It's essentially going to be a water intake or an explodium intake, but let's see if this functions better. I do expect this to be significantly improved over what we had previously. I would have liked to build our own, like, water-designed propeller pusher, but I don't think the base game is really designed for that, and we don't have a mod for that installed. So I'm sure there is a mod that exists for boating in this game, almost certainly, but we don't have it. So that's absolutely fine, and I'm not going to install it this far into the series. I'm not going to change up the mods that we have because that has a high probability of breaking everything. Okay, so let's just put this over in Eve, and at this point, I want to rotate us over to the horizon, so we need to clear the input blocker, and we need to be facing this way, so about 45 degrees. I'm going to put us on kill rot here, and we'll just angle ourselves right about there, and let's... Intake air deprived. No resource available. Okay, so the atmosphere here is either not high enough, or we need a certain amount of airspeed to get this. But this is saying no resource available. So I'm guessing that's the issue. Let's go into here and turn on infinite propellant. Okay. So as we can see, this is more than capable if we had air here. We can even fly with this thing. This is pretty funny at this point. This is a very effective torpedo. Okay, we hit the water and exploded, but that's absolutely fine. Interestingly, our controls are inverted. That's a little awkward. We can fix that. But obviously, that works and is absolutely fine. But we need to have a solution to the air intake, and that means that we have to bring oxidizer along, and that pretty much means that we have to use a rocket engine to do this. That's going to significantly reduce the amount of delta V that we have. Extremely significantly. It'd be really neat if we had an air intake for that. I wonder. Okay, this is a crazy idea. There's no way that the mods are designed to do this, right? But, okay, so in the life support, we have these atmospheric filters, these air filters here. They intake air and they output oxygen. Requires an atmosphere containing oxygen. So I think that's the issue. I think the atmosphere over Eve does not contain oxygen at all. Let me just double check that. KSP Wiki Eve. Let's see what we've got here. So the atmosphere is oxygen present? No. Yes, that is confirmed. Okay. So in that case, this system is just not going to work. We're going to have to bring along oxidizer, which is sad, because that will significantly limit how much we can do. But we don't need a powerful engine here. We need an engine that is extremely efficient at high pressure. But we don't need a powerful one. I think we might actually have to use a vector, but let's see. So thrust at sea level is 936. A vector would be wild overkill, and as you can see, it's kind of huge. Like, if we were to put this in, it would be like that. So that's kind of insane. No doubt about that. We will need some fuel tanks here. So this is way too big. This is not the size that I want. We're going to need to use smaller fuel tanks for this. And a vector will chew through that so quickly. Unless we massively thrust limit it, which is the plan as of right now. And we're probably not actually going to use a vector. I just think it's funny. So let's see here. Where is the very, very small parts? Here's the Oscar size parts, and that'll be perfect. So the Oscar size parts will go on there. We'll slap on this wild overkill vector. We'll put in a basic fin right about here, although this is inverted from the direction that I want it to be. So we're going to do something like that. No, this is still inverted. Hang on. That. And we need it to be in 2x symmetry. There we go. Then, of course, we need that nose cone, and I'm wondering, there's no way we can get a fuel nose cone at this size, right? We've got the small nose cone. I think we looked at this. I'm 99% certain there's no way to get a fueled nose cone at this size. So we're just going to go with the small nose cone. That'll be fine. But we know that everything was inverted in its directionality. So we need to take this and we need to rotate it like that. That should fix the inversion issue. So at this point, we'll save and put that out on the pad. This vector is wildly overkill. We really don't need it. We're going to have like a quarter second of burn time, I think. But I want to see how it goes. Also, I'm interested in knowing the thrust to weight and the ISP at Eve sea level. That's going to be interesting. So if we go in here, we can see that thrust to weight is 21.07. We've got 1 second of burn time. Hilarious. And I want to put this over on Eve. Obviously, we're not going to use this engine, but this is more of a proof of concept here. Not set orbit. Set position, 45 degrees, and there we go. Okay, so here we go on to Eve. And if we thrust limit this thing down, the question is, well, first off, it's a little too heavy. This isn't surprising, necessarily. Let's go ahead and put ourselves on kill rot, and yeah, we're not really able to get over to the horizon. So this is a very heavy engine, and that's unsurprising. But what I want to check here is, well, we don't even need a thrust to weight ratio of 1.0 for this. If we put this at a thrust limiter of, oh, we can't change this because of the input blocker. A thrust limiter of 0.5% puts us at 0.04. Okay, this engine is not active right now. So we'll activate that engine, and I want to move ourselves over. We can do this now with the gimbal. Kind of. Okay, I just put us at 2% thrust. And now you can see we've only got 56 seconds of burn time here. And we are, according to this, technically moving, but this engine is definitely way too much. And we knew that. I did it because it was funny, not because it was going to be effective. Okay, let's get rid of this thing. And we should put a more appropriately sized engine on this. So a Spark is going to have incredibly low efficiency in that pressure, I think. That's not that big of an efficiency difference. Okay. Well, at this point, I want to put this out there, and I want to see, can we get any amount of, like, steam speed at all? We're going to need to be able to travel at a reasonable clip, but not so fast of a clip that if we were to break out of the water and come back in, that we would explode. Or just, we would explode being in the water. So we need to figure out where that line is, and we want to go slightly below that line. That would be the goal. So we'll set our position back on Eve here with this engine, and you can see we've got about 2 kilometers per second on Kerbal, and on Eve we've got 658 meters per second. Okay, so put this in kill rot, and I'm trying to turn us right now. There we go. Turning is pretty responsive. So we're going to 45 degrees here. There we go. And we'll just position ourselves relatively flat, like so. And we'll just park about there. We'll throttle this thing up, activate the engine. This is at full thrust. It's kind of loud. Okay. So this is with infinite propellant on, and we're going to need to turn that off. That no longer needs to be a thing. But I'm just watching our overall speed here. We've only got 1 minute of propellant in this, and that's why I really wanted to have that propeller system work. Is because at this point, there's only so far that we can go. Unless we wanted to do something really dumb. So yeah, that works. But the main issue with it, of course, is we're not particularly good on the setup for the distance. We don't know how far this is going to be. We really, really don't. But that's it. That's what we've got. And you can see as soon as that burns out, we start slowing down significantly. So that's not very surprising. I am pretty okay with the amount of thrust that gave us. So that's interesting. That was a pretty good amount of thrust, all things considered. You can see we're a long ways away from the land still, and for our contract, we need to make ground contact. So the dumb thing that I was talking about is we can position ourselves, like, parallel to the ground, and then we can do a sort of side stroke, like this. It's very dumb. We could add in another reaction wheel or two to increase the power level of it. But this should be bringing us towards the shore in a more repeatable fashion. What if we were to design the entire craft to swim like this? Well, the main question is, I don't know if we're actually making any progress towards the shore. And this would be incredibly slow. If we assume that this surface velocity is correct, then we can see that we are making some amount of progress, but it is minimal. So we've got this here, and that gets us a ways at a pretty decent clip. We can, of course, also try to position ourselves fairly close as we come in by gliding with this, which I do intend to do. So as a hypothetical, if we were up over here, I want to move us up over this direction. So let's set our position, use middle mouse click to set position, and let's see how close we can get here. There. Sure. This isn't all that close, but it's fine. Okay, so we're just going to be making our way in here via this tool. Just trying to... This is not going very quickly, is it? So this is reducing our longitude. Let's try 40. That's putting us over land. So let's try... Okay, it blew us up before I could change it. That's fine. So we're going to revert this back to the vehicle assembly. There are definitely options there, for sure. But the real question is, what option do we want to pursue, right? So definitely landing in the shores is ideal, and we can glide our way towards that to some degree. Now, these fins do not have elevons on them, and having elevons would absolutely help matters. This Spark, I'm not sure if that's the most efficient engine at that altitude or not. We could go through and test every single one of these engines and find at that pressure level what's the level of ISP and go with the most efficient ISP. I would really, really like it if we could use a jet engine, because that would make this so much easier. But alas, that is not an option. So that is a lesson learned, and we will continue to work on this in the next episode. You can leave your offerings to the engagement gods in the form of likes, comments, subscribes, and bell ringings, and a very special thank you to all of the channel members for making this video possible, including ALS Gamer, Dark Horse, Ethan Feldman, Aurelio, Upper Cumberland Gamers, Nick Smarty, Dimitri H, Punching the Microphone, The Lounge STL, and all the rest. And of course, you. Thank you for watching. If you'd like to support the channel, you can click the join button down below the video, and as always, I will see you all next time.